Well, Dan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on Conversations with Daniel. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Double Daniels today. Conversation with Daniel.
Couple bookends, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. Icebreaker question for you.
Okay.
Well, this isn't part of the question, but you drive these trucks behind us?
I do, yeah, luckily.
Okay. That's got to be a bit of an adrenaline rush. Do you have other things in your life that you've also gotten, like driven or done things that are an adrenaline rush? Because it's got to be kind of part of being a fireman, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and growing up, I've always loved off-road vehicles. I used to race motocross, and
Okay.
I've always been into sports cars, Mustangs, and all the things growing up, right? So,
Nice.
But yeah, when you start getting behind the wheel of one of these, it's a different type of adrenaline that you have to actually control. It's not one you want to lose control in when you've got 6 people on board, and
for sure.
so it's and depending on the call, it's adrenaline can really get
just
ramped
what
up.
you're doing is an adrenaline, like going to help protect people, and I mean, sure that gives you not that you're looking for it, but I'm sure that would be an adrenaline rush in a way.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially depending on what the call is, right? So
True.
if you're going to somebody's CO detector going off, it's pretty easy to stay calm. And the thing with being on a volunteer or say paid part-time department, we carry a pager, so I'm just living my normal life doing, I could be at home eating dinner, I could be in bed in the middle of the night, or I could be opening Christmas presents. And when the pager goes off, so as soon as you get to hear, if it's somebody's CO alarm, it's not too bad, you get out the door. But if you hear, you got an infant choking, or you got somebody having a heart attack, it's your adrenaline levels really do ramp up at different levels, for sure.
Wow. Now, so tell me, what do you do? What's your position at the fire hall here? And we're at Tecumseh Fire Hall?
Yep, we're at Tecumseh Fire. This is Station 1. We have 2 stations. One's out on Walker Road.
Okay.
I'm a firefighter here for almost 15 years.
Awesome.
I'm head of our peer support team, involved with heavily with a lot of our charities, like the Goodfellows and the Paper Drive and all that stuff too. So
awesome. Well, thanks for doing that. That's a lot of good work for the community.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's about too, right?
That's awesome. Now, speaking of, what drew you to become a firefighter, and does that still remain true today?
I think it's like any little kid, right? You see the fire trucks go by and everybody goes crazy, right?
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
I grew up with a family, like my father owned Suburban Ambulance back in the 60s, and
cool.
had a towing company and a gas station, and a local gas station in town, and and all the ambulance guys were around all the time, the paramedics, and then even my father was a volunteer way back in the 60s, and so I guess it's kind of in the family too, and it always drew my attention, just for maybe the adrenaline, maybe the helping out the community and stuff too.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's awesome. Now you're seeing, you're as a first responder, you work with trauma all the time. Now, I was kind of wondering what advice you would give. So you arrive on a scene, and there's some trauma going on. What advice would you give to the people that are like the loved ones of that person? Because you're coming in, and I'm sure people are in shock, or I'm sure there's quite a variety of response. But what I'm kind of curious is what's helpful for that situation for the bystanders.
And to be honest with you, we discuss that kind of stuff a lot too, right?
Yeah.
Like we go to calls, and we see some horrific stuff, and it's not the fun stuff you want to see. And a lot of the times, if you talk to a lot of first responders, it's not necessarily the actual trauma that makes you emotional and to get the reaction. It's the family members. It's them reacting to, this is the worst moment in their life.
Yeah.
And so my advice for a situation like that, and especially depending on the trauma, a lot of times we like to remove the family from the actual area where the trauma has happened. Okay. Especially if there's CPR in progress, and you're taking out. There's a lot going on a medical call. So you got needles, you got this. We've got the EMS carries like a Lucas machine, which is a mechanical compression machine. Right. It's aggressive. It's just it's a lot for somebody to take in that hasn't seen it. So a lot of times
Right.
if we can take them away from there and bring them downstairs, upstairs, and
Right.
talk to them, just get to know them a little bit and just try and calm the situation
You
down.
think so? It was probably a lot more mechanical and stuff than their loved ones might be expecting, I'd imagine.
Well, that, and I think it's organized chaos, to be honest with you, because
Right.
EMS gets there and then we get dispatched out as well as firefighters to go, because we have a lot of the same equipment too. So it's a lot of hands doing a lot of things at once. It's very organized. But it's overwhelming to see if you've not seen it. I've been on for almost 15 years, and watching our Windsor Essex EMS, our paramedics are like the best in the country for sure.
Wow,
and
that's
to watch them actually do their job and to be a part of it, it's how synchronized and but it's a lot going on, and it can be overwhelming to watch for sure.
That's interesting. Kind of reminds me, as a funeral director, it reminds me of the first time I witnessed an embalming. Mm-hmm. Totally different, but I was okay with everything, watching how everything was, but then I was also a little surprised at how there was this one part of the embalming process was a little bit more mechanical. Like it was the person doing what they needed to do, but I was like, oh wow, you don't really think of all the stuff that goes on. Like you're saying, the machine is going up and down, and this is happening, and that's happening, and it's all happening for you to help save that person's life.
Yep.
And for me, it was watching the embalming process take place. But it's those things that are a little bit of a surprise. So I could see how definitely it would be helpful for that family to let you guys do what you need to do to help with their loved one, and to be removed, and to trust you guys with what you're doing.
Yeah, and we will get the occasion where they're not going anywhere. Like that's their loved one. I'm staying right here. So then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, can we step back and let them work?
Right.
And then we'll explain what's happening as it's going on.
That's
So
good.
so the person, the firefighter or the medic or whatever that takes that family member aside, you're not in the mix, but that job that he's doing is just as important, or she's doing is so important to keep that situation calm.
Right.
Because I've been to calls where the family members end up being a medical call. They get overwhelmed.
You've probably been called to a funeral home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
More than one occasion. Yeah.
Yeah, and where there's so much emotion in your sort of circumstance that someone passes out or something like that. Now, what's like, is it kind of passing out, fainting? Is that what?
Sometimes it's anxiety, right? Like they just get so worked up that, and a lot of times they'll get lightheaded. They'll, if they're hyperventilating, and then they're just overcome with emotion, right? And it's hard. It's to be honest with you, some of the calls that kind of stick with us the most are the ones that the family has reacted so so greatly to the trauma that it's. You don't forget those screams. You don't forget the stuff that happens, and sometimes you forget about what you saw at the trauma because the family, how the family reacted is just that overwhelming, right? So that's why when we get there, there's enough to remember. There's enough to do that. It's really important for us to keep all the family members and any spectators around calm. Mm-hmm. As soon as you can calm that situation, everything's better. Everybody can focus more. And I've had people on my back doing when I'm doing CPR, like screaming, So to try and control that is so important, right?
Yeah.
So
well, like you said, it's possibly the worst time they've ever experienced.
You're in their house
life.
At the very worst time of their life. Yeah.
And man, now when someone is injured or whatever might happen, they're experiencing the trauma. Or even their loved ones when they're in shock, because that's what happens, right? Like you're in trauma, you're experiencing shock. Like I don't know, I haven't been in too much terrible trauma, but say I get hit really hard and everything's just kind of like a grenade went off. And now, what advice would you give to the person who's in shock? Maybe to the loved ones, like what should they keep in their mind or try to remind themselves of when experiencing that shock?
A lot of times, like the first thing that people tend to do when something bad happens is panic. And when you panic, you don't think clearly, right? So that for us, as funny as it sounds, and we use it in a lot of different scenarios, is you got to control your breathing.
Okay.
You have to calm down. And a lot of times, like, the trauma might not even be as bad as they think it is. Like, they're making it out to be worse than it is. So they're hyperventilating, they're panicking, they're doing this. So when you actually tell somebody, and if you're with somebody who's been in trauma, I'll actually just tell them, look at me. You know, look at me in the eyes, and let them not focus on anything else. And okay, so let's just relax. Let's control our breathing. So
I feel actually relaxed looking into your
right. So you just take a 4-second breath in,
right.
Hold for 4, and calm the situation down,
right.
And calm everything else down. Because you lose control of your breathing, you panic, you lose control of your mind, right? So it's so important to stay calm, and sometimes it's hard because the situation could be like horrific. But it's that important that if panic will do nothing good for you. So
right. Focus on the very basics.
The very basics.
Breathing.
Absolutely. And there's been some times where somebody thought they swallowed a bee, and there was like my throat swelling up, and I'm just had them look at me, and it wasn't. It was just it was a panic attack, right? Like they were, but we calmed the situation down, put some O2 on them, and everything was fine, right? But they were just so worked up about something that didn't even happen.
Yeah.
So,
what did they swallow?
It was, what I think they felt something, but they thought it was a bee.
And they maybe were allergic to bees or something.
Well, that's exactly it. So then somebody from the outside's like, here, give him this EpiPen. I'm like, well, no, let's so that's another reason why you have to stay calm, because if you just react and panic, and it's like, oh, okay, here's a... So it is important. To me, it's every situation's better when you stay calm.
I'm wondering how... like, different personalities obviously react very differently to trauma, and I like how you just control that situation and tell the person, look at me, look at my eyes, now breathe, and I'm sure that can be helpful for almost anybody, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
the thing is and we try and tell some of the new recruits that get on and stuff like that, and we go to calls, and we're really, and the fire services come like light years with peer support, and having people talk about the stuff that they've seen, the traumas that they've seen, and a lot of times everything is perception, right? Like, if you go to a trauma, that trauma might affect me like horribly, and you walk away and go, it wasn't that bad, and if you start falling into other people's like, oh geez, that didn't even really bother him, maybe I shouldn't say anything because I'm going to look like it shouldn't have bothered me, but that's what we really try and drill into people's head, is that every trauma is different from everybody's perspective. It can hit somebody, you can associate it to something that relates to you personally.
Might have a trigger, right?
It could be whatever. So that's why we really try and say it doesn't matter what the call is or how traumatic it is. It can affect everybody differently, and nobody gets to tell you how to feel. So if it affected you, that's what we deal with, right? So
that's awesome. Great advice. Now, speaking of traumas and being affected by things you see, I'd like to ask you a bit of a personal question. If you've experienced a death or an event that has really affected your perspective in life.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I was 17 years old, actually.
Okay. Were you were?
I was not a firefighter yet
at that time.
But I will tell you that it influenced me to really pursue it even more.
Wow.
And I was with one of my best friends and riding my ATV, my 3-wheeler.
Okay.
And he hit a drainage ditch. Went 15 feet in the air, landed on his head. And at the time, not really having the training and not really knowing what to do and how to react and everything else, it was like, what is going on here? And then the ambulance came, swept him away. I went and took it. Fast forward to the hospital, and he died from his injuries. Wow. And
sorry to hear that.
No, for sure. And you know what? It's a story that I don't mind talking about, because it's really brought me to, that's why I'm so passionate about our peer support. Because back then, and that was in 1989, right? So I was 17 years old. You don't go talk to somebody about your feelings,
son.
100%. And you know what? And looking back, and I've been doing critical incident stress training and peer support training and that for almost 14 years since I've been on. And I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm thinking back to all these things that I went through as a teenager. It changed my life forever, right? Like it's like I can still vividly play that day back in my head, like I'm watching it on HD, right? And it's so to me that affected me in a lot of ways of wanting to make sure if somebody is like, you know, hurting from seeing something traumatic or anything like that, and to deal with it, right? To talk about it, to
work through it instead 100%. Of just trying to move on without dealing
so important
with it.
Yeah, it's so important to, if you keep piling it in and piling, it's like eventually something's going to let go somewhere, right? So if you think you're just going to hold everything in and just suck it up like the old days they used to say, it's going to come out in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. Well, that's, you gotta deal with the wound. You gotta deal with what's hurting, or else it's going to be worse later on.
And the sooner the better.
Yeah.
So the sooner, like as soon as you, like our rule of thumb is if we've been to a bad call, we've come so far as to put on our report pads now. So when our officers fill out our incident reports, at the bottom of it says, do you think we need peer support? Okay. So depending on the call, now we're being so proactive that if we went to a call that we think the guy that we're on the truck should be checked on, we'll do follow-ups on them. So because we want to try and deal with that or have them talk about that within 72 hours of the trauma, right? So before it gets embedded, so
that's really good to know.
Yeah,
that's really good to know. That's great advice. Even taking, I'm thinking in what I deal with, I do find it most helpful if I deal with a very dramatic situation. And yes, you're right. Usually it's the family members that are mourning or grieving that could affect me even more than the deceased person.
Absolutely.
In the condition. But after, say, being in an office with someone and dealing with really heavy stuff, or going on a funeral and really going through that dramatic time, going back to the office and sharing with a coworker that, hey, you know what, I think this is kind of affecting me, and just being able to share what I feel, is that part of what we should be doing, is just sharing, okay, I think it's affecting me, and this is how it's making me feel. 100%.
And a lot of times what I want to do is, like, even if say if you came to me and you wanted to talk to me, I would start about, hey Daniel, tell me, how's your day been going? What'd you do this morning? You know what I mean?
Okay.
And just try and get you into your day, right? And then, because what this is about is I want you to tell me details. I want you to tell me, as awful as it might sound, is like I want the details. I want what bothered you. What is it that? Same with, like, if you've seen a car accident. Like I want to tell me that you saw the blood and guts. Tell me what's. I want to unlock that stuff that's really triggering and bothering you, right?
That's the stuff that we can push down quickest to try to maybe move on, because we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and the stuff that you're going to see when you close your eyes, the stuff you're going to see and remember.
The stuff that's going to pop back up, right?
and all those triggers. It could be a smell. It could be, it could be a sound. It could be anything, right? So, and like I said, in all the training I've taken over the years, we are nothing but good listeners. To be honest with you, I just want you to just talk to me about what's bugging you, right?
Interesting.
And the more you say about it, the more details you talk, and the earlier you talk about it, the better you're going to feel.
Now, do you know why? Like, why is that? Why does me sharing, or the fireman sharing what he just witnessed, what he just saw, why is it that when we share what we're feeling, why does that help?
You know what? I think it must be just because the more you internalize everything, and the more you just think about it and dwell on it and imagine it and everything else, and you're keeping all those feelings and emotions locked up, and and if there is something bothering you, you're bottling that up too. You're doing everything that's just not. And sometimes you just have to, like, just talk about it, and it doesn't have to be with peers. It could be like, you could have a buddy that you're having a coffee with, and obviously with the fire service, and I'm sure with you, there is confidentiality. So when you're with one of your coworkers, that what you say is between you two. It's no different than being on a call. It's no different than you working at the funeral home. So, but just being able to share, it doesn't have to be formal. We don't have to sit in front of each other in a chair and say, tell me about your feeling. No, it's more or less just
maybe while you're barbecuing some of the burgers out here.
Right. Yes. It's the perfect time to do it. It's like let's just chat about it, and that's at the end of the day, it's just getting it out of the that storage and talking about it.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's really good advice. Now, I do like to ask the audience, or some people who might be watching, if they have any questions for the guest I'm having on, and I did have a couple. One person wanted to know about the fireman calendar, but we're not even going to go there. So someone asked, how do you deal with the trauma that you deal with as a first responder?
You know what? I hate to say that you get used to it, because you don't. We're going to see stuff that it's just nobody's meant to see, right? It's just, and it's one of those things that you really have to leave any situation, especially a medical call, where you've done everything you can. You've worked on, you've done CPR, you've done this, you've done that. They've loaded them up, and at the end of the day, you have to be able to walk away and say, I did everything in my power and everything I was trained to do. And if that person had a chance, it was today. You know what I mean? And to me, a lot of our peer support stuff, we talk about, self-talks. You know what I mean? Have self-talks with yourself. So I had one where it was a 7-month-old baby, and I was at my parents' house, and it was literally behind their house. And unfortunately, the pager went off, 7-month-old, and I worked on the baby before ambulance even got there. They were 6 months. Or they were 6 minutes away. And you know what? I left there, and unfortunately the baby didn't make it and whatever, but I left there knowing that my training kicked in. I did everything I could. And that's what you have to tell yourself, right? You have to tell yourself, like, I didn't cause you did your best. You did your best. You did your training. And if it didn't sit well, I'm going to lean on my resources, right? Like I'm going to reach out to my peer support team. I'm going to reach out to somebody to talk to about it. And because the pager could go off and you could be at something else right after. So you just don't want them piling up.
So now someone was asking, another question from the audience was, they said, you see so many dark things constantly, day in and day out. So much trauma and so much hopelessness maybe in some circumstances, but where personally would you see hope? Where do you find hope?
You know what? I think with a lot of it, we do see a lot. There's a lot of good too, right? Like, so we just had our paper drive for the Goodfellows, right?
True. Yep.
So
I got one on my dash.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear. So, when we have those 3 days where we're out selling papers, and we set up at all the grocery stores and home hardware and shoppers, and you know what? Like those days when we're out there on the street, like and we're standing there selling the papers, that interaction with people and the generosity that we see and everything else, it's incredible.
Awesome.
And when we take 3 days of paper sales and raise $62,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then we order 100 food baskets, and we have a toy drive, which upstairs is half of our classroom is full of toys right now.
Awesome.
We collect enough toys to give our 100 families in Tecumseh Christmas dinner, toys for all their kids for Christmas.
Wow.
And then we hand deliver them to their house.
Awesome.
So to be able to go out there, do the fundraiser, collect the money, roll it, count it, put it in the bank, get the stuff and bring it right to your community.
Yeah.
And to see the face on the kids when you're delivering all their toys for Christmas, their Christmas dinner, that makes up for a lot of bad calls. And
so true.
In October we have Fire Prevention Week, where we have an open house here for the 5 days during the week. We give fire truck rides, coloring books, hats, and those interactions with the community, because they support us like crazy. Like obviously, we took $62,000 out of people's car windows and at the grocery store.
Good job, Windsor and Essex.
It's unreal. It really is. So that's the stuff that gets you through, right?
Yeah.
And it's just trying to do the good stuff that makes you feel better.
That's great. There's that it just reminds me, it's more blessed to give than to receive. So you guys being able to give, man, that lifts up your spirits and gives you so much hope. That's awesome.
And I tell a lot of the newer recruits that get hired, and it's a different generation, and there are some, that they don't donate their time as much as some, but you know what, that's And the thing is I tell them that, when you get this uniform right here, this is a gift, man. Like I could walk into any facility in this town. I could walk into my local grocery store and say, I have a family that's in need, and blah, blah, and he'll give me gift cards. He'll give me. So to have that kind of power just by putting on this uniform, that makes you feel good too. Like when you can do good just by a position, and if you don't do something with that, shame on you for taking the position that somebody would.
True.
So
that's awesome.
There's a lot of opportunity to do good stuff. So we just need to keep the young folks, doing it too.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that tradition going.
To those of the audience that are not firefighters, which I'd imagine are a lot of the audience that would be watching, I would say if you're looking for hope something great to do is to look to serve in the community and to give, because if like in myself, I've heard different people talk that personally, if they're feeling down or depressed or something, go and look for some way to help someone.
100%.
And it'll change your perspective.
Yes, exactly.
There's a challenge for you.
And the thing is to be honest with you, we had last year with COVID, we had to think on our feet. We weren't allowed to sell papers on the street. We were devastated. We're like, what are we going to do?
Right.
We are known for raising, like big money every year,
right.
And to not be out there in our gear and whatever and selling on the street, we're like, so we went to all our local businesses, and it just shows you again about the community. We just said, can we set up a table? We'll put the Goodfellow paper there. We'll put a box there that's hands-free.
Cool.
And we thought, I don't know how this is going to turn out. We had our third best year ever.
That's awesome.
So I'm thinking we weren't even on the street.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the people that we had volunteering, because it was a lot more volunteers I needed, right? So we had people at 8 different stores, 2 per store for an 8-hour shift. That's a lot. So we had. So if you're looking to volunteer, stop by the fire hall. We always have stuff that we love to have, especially that are like the people from the community helping out. And it is, and it's, you can sit inside. It's nice and warm. You're interacting with people coming in and out.
That's cool.
And it does really make you feel good. Like you said, it'll fix any bad day.
Awesome. And if it can fix a firefighter, it can fix most of us.
That's right. It's true.
That's great. Now is your chance to ask me, Daniel, the funeral director, anything that you like.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because we've done some firefighter funerals, and we've done some quite a bit of stuff. And every time we've worked with any of the funeral homes, they've just been incredible. Like they really do go above and beyond to make things perfect. Because firefighter funerals are like they're involved. They're very involved, and there's a lot to them. And I mean, they just make it work every time. Awesome. And a lot of times when I'm at the funeral home and I see you guys in your element and stuff, and it's like, every day you go to work, there's no real good that people are coming to see you about, right? So when you're dealing with families coming in and they're making those plans, some of them unexpectedly. Oh yeah. So absolutely. That's heavy stuff too. So my thing is you don't have the day where somebody's not planning something about somebody who died, right? So it's hard to really have a day where you're feeling really up. So how do you leave work at night and be like, okay, that was a pretty downer day. I dealt with 5 families that are burying their loved ones. So to me, I would think that would be hard to keep, to go home and put a smile on for your family. Yeah, and I think we are learning more as a funeral industry as well, that we do need to look after ourselves as well, because I think for a long time it was like that old school mentality of just shove it down and keep on going. Yeah. But that can cause burnout. 100%. And I think the burnout rate for funeral directors is about 5 years. Well, and you guys are putting in long hours. You're there all night. You're there during the day, or depends. Depends on the funeral home you're at. A lot of funeral homes now are a bit more 9 to 5. Oh, okay. And we have our set appointment times. So where I'm at right now, it's a 9 o'clock appointment time or a 1 o'clock appointment time. And we will definitely work late sometimes if, like, I'm not going to rush a family through something. I'm never going to do that. Right. So if I have to come home an hour and a half late, I'll just step out of the office. Hey babe, I'm coming home late. Yeah. And she understands. And right. And if I'm dealing with back-to-back dark situations, I think, you go into the office where the other funeral directors are, and you kind of let them know how it's going. Like, this is really stressful, or I've got a terrible situation I'm dealing with. I can't believe it. And the other funeral directors get it, because we've all been there, and it's like, yeah, like that sucks. Like, yeah. And especially unexpected deaths. If somebody's planning a funeral that had no intentions on doing that, and now they're sitting in front of you, and yeah, and it's the traumatic situations. It's funny, like, as funny as it sounds, a majority of deaths are unexpected. As right. Expected as you would assume they would be. Yeah, that's very true, yeah. Because you would assume that great-grandma is an expected death, but she passes and the family still is unexpected. Yeah. Which is, I mean, you have to be in their position to appreciate that, I guess. Yeah.
but I guess because we never really know when somebody is going to die.
No.
So, but to your point though, those traumatic deaths and the ones that are extra heart-wrenching, yeah, that can be very difficult to deal with. But at the same time, probably like yourself, you try not to personalize it too much.
Yeah.
You're there to help walk them through what they have to get through. And I have like what I have to do, and I have my job, and I do it with care and compassion. And I say, okay, like I'm here to help them get good closure for dealing with the loss of their loved ones. So I'm gonna help walk them through the funeral service, and I'm going to possibly make some recommendations that I would think it would be beneficial to them. And it's actually interesting. There's several families that I've sat with in not too distant past have said, you know what, we're not gonna do anything. And then I would say, okay, like, now why? And well, we just don't think we need it. And as you would know, like, that's kind of just trying to ignore some of the pain. And then so I would suggest, you know what, in my professional opinion, I think it's always healthy to come and see your loved one and say goodbye. Like, that offers healing and offers some closure. And I've had someone say, you know what, no, I'm not really interested. And then 2 hours later they go, okay, you know what, I'm going to. And because they thought about it, they prepared everything.
And how thankful they probably were that they did.
Trust me,
Yeah.
every single time.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that we came in to say goodbye. Every time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really answering your question, but,
no, it's all
but
good.
You know what, on my drive, like, so you go into the office sometimes and you kind of let it off your shoulders a little bit to understanding professionals that it's a confidential office. And then on my way home, I just kind of like, I'll pray, I'll just kind of just let everything go, and sometimes I'll drive home in quietness and just enjoy my 35-minute drive home. I live in Kingsville. Yeah, driving through the county, just the peace, and enjoy it, and just kind of quiet my soul and just have that, and then come home and give my family a hug. And
well, yeah, because you kind of appreciate everything at home a little bit more, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is kind of coming to the conclusion of this conversation, which has been amazing. Can you tell us what you have? You mentioned a couple things already, but why don't you tell us what you've got going on in the community? Maybe what's been going on around here, and whatever you like.
Yeah, well, this is obviously this is a big time of year for us, and Goodfellows is a huge one for us. So we are in the middle of collecting our toys and all that stuff too, and
right now, just where we're at right now is December 9th. So we're a few weeks away from Christmas, just in case this video timing is a little bit different.
Right. And then actually on the 18th is our last push. So we'll be at all the stores we just did for our paper drive. We're gonna, because normally we bag groceries at Zehrs and Metro and that. But because of with COVID and everything, they're kind of shying away from that. So we're still going to be able to set up our table at the grocery store. Okay. So we'll put one last push on there.
Okay. On the 18th?
On the 18th, yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll be at the Zehrs here and the Superstore, and then we're going to be set up at Home Hardware, Metro, and those things. But cool. That's our kind of our last push. So we're on track for a record year right now for a fundraiser. We potentially could hit $80,000 after we're done bagging groceries, and we have a couple more donations coming in.
I'm going to see if we can get this posted. We're going to see if we can rush this a little bit. By the way, I've never introduced Brian, who's behind the camera every time. And Brian helps set up the lighting, the camera, editing videos. I'm just going to turn the camera on Brian. He's totally unexpecting it. Brian, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for all you do. We're going to see maybe if we can get this video posted before. I probably just totally messed with the camera. Sorry, Brian. But yeah, if we can get this video posted before the 18th,
Yeah.
We're going to see what we can do, and maybe maybe we'll have to interrupt the scheduled release so we can put this out, and let's see if the community can get us past 80,000.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's you know what, it's amazing every year. We always say like, okay, this is our new record. Like, when does it end, right? Like, where does it? We would have never dreamt in a million years that we'd be bringing in 80,000. That's like 25% of what the whole Windsor Goodfellows brings in as a whole.
Wow.
So it is pretty it is impressive. It just speaks volumes of our community and the generosity, especially during tough times, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Wow.
it's but on top of that, I work full time for the town of Tecumseh as well, and
Awesome. What do you do?
so I'll
at
be
the town of-
public works. So I drive the snow plow and drive,
Awesome.
so it'll be that time of year. Hopefully, the snow's being nice to me right now and not.
So do you do sidewalks? Or
Yeah, we do sidewalks too. Yeah.
You do the roads with the big plow?
Yep, and the sidewalks. I'm in that sidewalk machine
You gotta,
quite often.
okay, so what you got to do is, I think it was in Sweden, their plows have these things that right before you hit a driveway, it blocks.
I've seen those.
That? We got to get those in Canada, because man, everyone works so hard shoveling the driveway, and we appreciate so much our roads being cleared, and then boom, you got like this much heavy.
Trust me, you want to know something? For somebody who's always out usually trying to help the community in that, for me, driving a snowplow, it kills me. Because I see those people, and I've had snow shovels thrown at me. It's like, I'm sorry, it's got to go somewhere, right? It's unfortunate, but it's a part of the lovely winter weather we have.
You know what? We're blessed with clear roads, and we got to work a little harder on the ends of our driveways. So
that's it.
We got to be thankful for what we have.
I try and slow down and not make it this big. But yeah, so that's my full-time job there in public works, and
awesome. And you coach as well?
Yes, my daughter plays very competitive soccer, so
Awesome.
I do some of the strength and conditioning, and I'm the trainer on the team for any medical issues or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm pretty heavily involved in that too. And then my oldest daughter, she's kind of outgrown her sports now, so she's going to school and working part-time and boyfriend and all the stuff that 19-year-old teenagers do now. So, but
I know you keep him in line. No?
Yeah, we that's all I just said. Just treat her well. That's all, and there'll be no problems.
Good. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation.
Thanks for asking me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great, and thank you all for tuning in.
Awesome.